No, I don't. You're probably the same section as my roommates. Is that 2-hour section late? Yeah.
Hey everyone.
Get off the stage.
Thanks for coming out all in the rain. We're glad to see you all here. So sorry, we have some, is it scripture first?
Yes.
I've done this before.
You missed something important. Hey everybody!
So we're glad you're here. Welcome to BCM. I hope you all had a good spring break. So tonight's scripture comes from Ruth 1:22 through 2:3. It says, So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Naomi said to her, Go ahead, my daughter. So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. And now Jalen's going to pray for us. Everybody bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for today, and thank you for everything that you're giving to us. Thank you for allowing us to get here safely, and please help us as we travel home tonight. Be with Edwin and the sports team and the person talking about coffee and cocoa today. Be with the worship team as they lead us in the song, and help us throughout the rest of the week. Amen.
All good evening. Y'all would please stand with us for worship. song, hallelujah. We overcome in Jesus, in Jesus, hallelujah. Memories undone, hallelujah. We overcome, hallelujah. We overcome in Jesus, in Jesus. And when there be mercy in the darkness, and let our song break through the night. Let your voices sing that Christ is King, for Jesus is alive. Let your voices sing that Christ is King, for Jesus is alive. Out of the depths I cry to you. In darkest places I will call. Incline your ear to me anew. And hear my cry for mercy, Lord. To count my sinful ways, how could I come before your throne? If full forgiveness meets my case, I stand redeemed by grace alone. I will wait for you. I will wait for you on your word. I will rely. I will wait for you. Surely wait for you till my soul is satisfied. So put your hope in God alone. Take courage in His word to say, completely and forever one. By Christ emerging from the grave, I will wait for you. I will wait for you on your word. I will rely. I will wait for you. Surely wait for you till my soul is satisfied. His steadfast love has made a way, and God Himself has paid the price, that all who trust in Him today find healing in His sacrifice, that all who trust in Him today find healing in His sacrifice. I will wait for you. I will wait for you on your word. surely wait for you till my soul is satisfied. And Father, we do not deserve this. So God, as Evan brings the message, I just pray that you would open our hearts, open our ears, Lord, to hear the message that you've laid on his heart. I just ask that you speak to us in this time. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Thank you.
It's great seeing everybody here and actually seeing faces. This is kind of cool. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes.
At least one person's clapped. Good deal. I know it just seems like yesterday when we started talking about Ruth, right? It just, nothing's happened since then, right? Nothing big. So y'all just remember what we were talking about? Talking about Elimelech. Do what?
What was in the name?
What was in the name? That wasn't in it. Yeah, man. Good job, Clay. Elimelech. What's his name? What does it mean? What is in a name? My God is King. Did you say right, King? Elimelech. This guy. His name means my God is King. They were in Bethlehem. There was a drought. There was a famine going on. So he felt like it'd be better to take his family, his wife, and his 2 sons to Moab to live, because hopefully it was better there. And Moab was not a good place for Israelites to be. But they go to Moab, and he takes his wife Naomi, which means what? Anybody remember her name? What her name means? Sweet or pleasant. Sweet is the number one term. And then the 2 sons, I always mispronounce their names, I believe, Mahlon and Chilion, and their names basically mean death and destruction, sickness and death, however you want to look at it. And while they're there, Elimelech passes away, and his sons marry. I don't know what order this takes place. We just know this takes place in Moab. And so his sons marry Orpah and Ruth. Okay, and both his sons pass away, so Naomi's trying to figure out what's going on, and she's hearing things are better back in Bethlehem, so she decides to take her 2 daughter-in-laws back home, right? You remember this, kind of? Or you know because you've read it before? Okay, so they go back, and then Naomi goes, this is silly, y'all should go back, no reason to come with me. Go back home, go be with your people. And they both go, no, we're going to go with you. And she goes, no, really, you can go back, it'll be okay. And so Orpah, which her name means the back of the neck, she decides to go back to her home and be with her people. But Ruth, who means friendly or companion, she decides to stay with Naomi. And so Naomi goes back home to her land, where she comes in, and what does she tell people when they greet her? You remember?
Don't call me Naomi.
Yeah, call me Mara. Call me bitter, because everything that's taken place, right? So here's where we pick up the story in Ruth chapter 2, is Naomi and Ruth have a decision to make. And Ruth goes to Naomi and says, hey, I've got an idea. I'm going to go glean some barley from the area and come back with something that we can make some money off of. Now that kind of sounds like a strange thing to say, doesn't it? In Leviticus 19, 9 and 10, we get this as one of the laws for the Israelites. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of the field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner. You say it right. And I am the Lord your God. Okay? So there's a law that somehow Ruth knows about, that if I go to somebody else's farmland, if I go to their property, there's going to be a little section that's not been picked because it's for the poor. It's for people like us that have no ways of making our way in the world. And so this is kind of like the help that God has set out for people in a foreign land, for people that have no money, that they can survive, that they can be and stand on their own 2 feet and not have to go and beg or anything like that. They can go and work for it. So Ruth asked, and somehow she knows this. Now, she was a Moabite, but she has made a conversion over to the Jewish faith. And not only is this, notice in the story that we're given, in the biblical account that we're given, Naomi doesn't say, hey, Ruth, this is an idea. You go out and do this. Ruth goes to Naomi and says, let me go to the fields and see what I can glean. Let me go see what I can come up with. Okay? And this is where we pick up in the story. Remember the last verse in chapter 1 said, I'm in chapter 3, so let me turn back just a bit. It said that the barley harvest was beginning. And that was a change. It was something that took place. They go from a land of famine, which Bethlehem actually means house of bread. They go from this famine and they come back to a harvest. And that's what's taking place here. And Ruth is the one that makes a suggestion and takes the initiative to do this. She had a lot of different decisions that she could make. Okay? New place. She could leave Naomi. Man, this was a stupid idea. I'm going to go back home. She could try to raise money illegally. She could try to go out and find a job. She could try to do all these different things. But she knows the laws of the land. And she makes the decision to do something that is set up for her. Last week, everybody had a decision to make about what you wanted to do with your spring break. And everybody made different decisions. Some people went to the beach. Some people went on the UAH trip I don't know where they went to do some work. I know Brad went there, and he'll share about that, I'm sure, with y'all if you want to ask him when he's here. There was a lot of different decisions that could have been made. A couple of us decided to do a little trip that we call SPOTS. SPOTS stands for Special Project Other Than Summer, okay, SPOTS. And I always say SPOTS trip, but trip is already in SPOTS. Don't worry about that. So the whole deal is that we as a BCM have been doing this for years, and we've had a hiatus for the last 2 years. And so a lot of y'all didn't know about it. A lot of y'all didn't know the things that we do and what we try to accomplish over spring break. Not everybody wants to go, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But some of us went. And so I wanted y'all to hear some of the stories. And I only know 3 that are going to come up for sure. I want to ask Sawyer to come up first. I know Caleb's going to come up, and I know Jonathan's going to come up. If anybody else wants to come up and share about their SPOTS experience, come on up, buddy. You can do that now, and then I'm going to ask Spencer to come up after they're done, though. He's already smiling. Get that.
What story are you telling?
All right, so first of all, I just want to thank BCM for the opportunity to get to go on the SPOTS trip. I actually grew up going on a bunch of doing different service projects in the summer. Whether that was like doing landscaping stuff, building wheelchair ramps, doing VBSs, basketball camps, all that type of stuff. So grew up doing it. So when I saw the opportunity, I was like, why not? And then that paired with, I'm in the spiritual gifts Bible study, and so God laid it on my heart of like, hey, your spiritual gift is service. So why have you not been serving? And so that's why, like, as soon as I could, I signed up for the SPOTS trip because God was telling me this is where you need to be. And so it was one of the best trips I've ever been on, honestly. Like, didn't get a lot of sleep. That was mainly because I stayed up late every night, but spring break, don't focus on school, just have fun. But so yeah, got to meet some new people, which that's something I really enjoy doing. And with COVID, I haven't really got to do that a lot. I always go against what my parents taught me as a kid. I love talking to strangers. So also learned how to roof a house. That was cool, but I think I learned more from people's personalities on the trip than I actually did like the actual roofing the house, doing the landscaping stuff. It's just kind of little side conversations you have with people. You never really know what someone's going through or where they're at in life unless you have those intentional conversations. And that's something I've really strived to do ever since my senior year of high school. Lost a dear friend to suicide senior year. It was all unexpected. And so that's why I try to have those conversations with people because you don't know unless you ask or talk. And so, I don't know. So to me, yes, I enjoyed serving, but getting to know people, like I've talked to the majority of everyone in this room, but it's different when it's on a smaller scale and you get to have those more intimate conversations. And so staying up late, getting to know the 2 girls from Tuscaloosa, that was fun. I mean, never met him before. Hope to get to see him again. Scott Hall, in between like building, like redoing the roof and all that. Learned a lot about him, what's going on in his life right now. And that also helps you know like what you can be praying for people. So, yeah, this whole trip, serving and talking. I mean, if I could sum it up, I guess. Met a bunch of different characters, interesting stories that I could get into later if you ask, I guess. So yeah, this is my first trip. I'm a senior, so hopefully it won't be my last because I really enjoyed it. But yeah, that's what I got.
Those of you who for some reason wouldn't know, my name's Caleb. I got to go on the spots trip as well. It was a blessing to be able to serve others. One thing I have to, is on my heart that I sort of have to lay out. The first 24 hours of working there, because of what I learned about the situation in the place, I didn't really have peace working on it at the beginning, but within the last day, from things that were shared by other students that were here, such as JT and what everyone reflected on at the end of the project. Ultimately, sometimes we just gotta be the worm, like at the end of Jonah, where a worm literally just showed up to eat a plant, do his thing, and go on his merry way, and leave God to do the rest of it. And in our case, as Edwin pointed out at the end of the trip, sometimes all we can do and all we're supposed to do is literally just show up to do our job, be an encouragement to others, and trust God with the rest of it. That's what we were able to do when we went on our spots trip, to quite literally just be an encouragement to the church that was there by starting work on roofing the house that they intend to make their church in the future. And it was not an easy thing for me to swallow at first, but it's, I think, very important to realize at times. On that note, though, I'm sure Jonathan will be able to share more about the roofing aspect of the project since he was more heavily involved than I was. So I'm going to specifically share about the wonderful man that is Mr. Dion Williams. He more or less, shall we say, shanghaied me, Boone Perkins, Katie Weaver, there you are, and Sona Lee, who was one of the young ladies that joined us from UA Tuscaloosa, and he took us to another job site, which was quite literally about 3 blocks from the coast, so we could quite literally see the ocean from where we were working. It was beautiful and wonderful. But over the course of the 2 days that we worked there, we met with the lady that Mr. John coordinated with so that we were able to work on this project. And from what she told us, to our understanding, a lady used to live on that property before Katrina hit. Katrina tore everything down, lost her house. I assume a couple years, whatever, however long it took for stuff to settle down. She had prepared to get materials, get people to work on rebuilding the house. So she had everything lined up, supplies, etc. Volunteer team was going to come down and start work on the house, but at the last minute, the volunteer team was not able to make it. And I guess consequently or coincidentally, the supplies were stolen. So she eventually moved back to Louisiana. And within the last 3 years, I assume, to my understanding, she's moved back. But I guess because of her age or just physical ability, she cannot keep up with making sure the property is clean. On that note, somebody within the community, I guess, reported it to local government, whatever, because somebody got ticked off by it. And so she was, I guess, fixing to be fined for not being able to take care of it. So we were brought in to clean up the property to make sure that she doesn't have to deal with that and other people are satisfied that, hey, this is a nice clean community. And so, again, just like with the house where we roofed it, more other people did anyway. Sometimes all we need to do, what our group did. Sawyer was there with us on the second day. I forgot to mention that. Where you are, I can see you in blind. Oh yeah, thanks. Sorry.
Sawyer wanted to experience.
Yeah. So he swapped out with Boone on the second day. But all we quite literally were able to do, and it's what we needed to do, is show up, be the worm, quite literally eat up the grass. Not literally, but figuratively speaking. And just make sure that the property was clean enough so the lady was able to be blessed by that. And that was a blessing to me because that's part of my heart, being able to help other people, being able to serve. On a moment of levity, because of just outright how naturally funny Mr. Dion was. He may or may not have called me Carlos. I don't remember what nickname Katie had. Sawyer, I think you were nicknamed Tom because of Tom Sawyer.
I was Tom, Katie was Katie did.
Katie did. I don't remember what he called Boone. And then... Daniel? Okay, you were Daniel, was it? And then Soda Lee, he called her Sausalita. Mr. Dion is probably one of the genuinely most naturally funny and welcoming people I've met in a very long time. So it was a blessing to be able to get to work alongside him on a project. So that's what I have to share. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Jonathan.
So just this past weekend, after we had finished the trip and come back, and we're talking about who was going to be speaking about this trip today, we asked. It was in our group meeting that we had for the trip. It was just, hey, who's going to speak? And Sawyer and Caleb said, yeah, I'll speak, and I'll be happy to do that. And then someone, and I don't know who, said, well, Jonathan's got to tell this story. and I go, okay. But first, a little bit more of like what the structure of this was. So it is like Sawyer and Caleb have mentioned. We were roofing a house. That was probably like 15% of the time that was spent. A much larger portion of it was spent de-roofing. And so the church, the house that we were working on, had been given to a church after one of their members had passed away, and it was in a very large state of disrepair. Then the roof, especially, was in a very large state of disrepair. So a lot of it was spent getting all of the shingles off and making sure it was clean, and diagnosing like what plywood boards that were under the shingles need to be taken off, which ended up being most of them. 85% of them had to be taken off and removed and replaced entirely, which if we had known that at the start, it would have been a lot faster. But it was diagnosing that and making sure we did that to where we could put a new roof on in a quality way. And then once we actually started roofing, we were able to slightly fly up that roof. And so that was kind of the structure of the trip. And then with many trips of this nature where this wasn't disaster relief, but doing work that is on a house that is not up to a standard and like bringing it up to standard with a very large group of amateurs. And so on this trip we had Steve Hall was one of the men that went with us, knew how to do construction very well. That was what he did for a living, and he does that sometimes now even though he's retired. Jackson Sanders had a good amount of roofing experience and a good amount of construction experience. A handful of us, the rest of us, had some roofing and construction experience that worked out fine. And just the entire gamut of experience. Most of us on the far lesser end besides Jackson and Steve. And so with all of that, with the nature of that, comes some very exciting stories. And so with the de-roofing that happened, we had to take almost all of the decking off. And the clearest visual image I have in my head of this entire trip is standing on rafters in the ceiling, just horizontal, and just standing on them, lifting up a plywood board, and 3.5 feet away from me, we make eye contact, and there was a raccoon. And we had been up there, this was the second day that we were working, we had been up there for 3 hours, and we were making a lot of noise on that roof, and that raccoon was in there the entire time, and it was scared out of its mind. And we made eye contact, and it felt like 5 or 10 seconds. It could not have been more than a half a second before I dropped that board and got out of there very quickly. And I immediately went up to the top of the roof, because we were on both sides, and I said, hey everybody, let's have a prize. Who has found the coolest thing in the room? I didn't care about the question. And JT very quickly recognized that I did not care about their answers to this question. He said, well, I assume you asking that means you've won. So what'd you find? And I said, a raccoon. And right at about that moment, I saw like all of the girls on the trip in a van driving away. And I go, oh, they don't get to experience this. That's sad. And so all of the guys just immediately came to the one side of the house. We got the plywood board and pulled it down a little bit further down. And I had assumed that it had just retreated back into the top of the roof, and we were going to have to get that out later. And so I got back down, and I started to pick up the plywood board again, and that raccoon about got into my face that time. And so I got, as quickly as I could, while moving over rafters, out of there as fast as I could, which is the most nimble I had been on that roof the entire trip. And I got out of there incredibly quickly. The raccoon got out, got up on the plywood, looked at Boone Perkins, who was standing there with a crowbar, and looked in the direction of me, who was just scurrying away, and immediately ran off the side of the roof and just tumbled to the ground and ran into the woods. So, all that to say, sometimes you go in with a plan, and sometimes God has something very unexpected for you, and it just happens like that sometimes. And so yes, so I was told, yes, you have to tell that story, and that is the story.
So I'm going to continue from that and tell another story of God putting me in a situation that I was not comfortable being in. And I'm pretty sure, like, most of y'all have heard this individually, but I feel I need to tell it again because of the point that it makes. Last semester, when Laurel shared about her experiences over the summer, she had a very similar point, that God puts you in situations in which you are not comfortable and then qualifies you to do the calling that He has set for you. So this is the first Sunday morning that we were there. We had already gone to the service of the church that was hosting us, which was different than the church that we were serving. And we had left there, went to the second church, and we walk in, and this is a dying church. We almost tripled their congregation. There was no one there was under the age of 70. And part of that was really saddening for me and sorrowing for me. But the flip side of that coin, right, is that they're body believers just like we are, right? They're worshiping just like we are. So why should we treat them any differently? And we brought them, and talked to anybody who went. Us just being there brought them so much joy and so much encouragement, knowing that there was this group of college students who came down to help them in their free time. So we're coming in there, meeting and greeting, and the pastor goes up to the front of the room and says, so, which one of you all can play piano? Now, I was not there about 30 minutes ago for a reason, because I do not play piano. But every eye in the room turns to me, because I noodle around and kind of sound like I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And he says, well, come on up. You can lead worship for us today. And I said, Lord, this is in your hands, not mine. And I came up, and they're just reading out of an old hymnal, right? And the first one, that was open to, that the pastor's wife pointed to, it was in a weird key and a really weird time signature. And I'm just going oh dear, this is not good. This is not good. So the pastor keeps talking for a few minutes, and the whole time I'm just trying to survive, right? Long story short, I get through it, but barely. And then finish the rest of the service getting through it, but barely. And I was not prepared for that in any way. Given the conscious choice, I would not have gone up and done that. But coming away, that was one of the most impactful moments of the trip for me, was that, God saying to me, I don't care that you don't feel qualified, I'm calling you anyway. And that's how we should act when we have conversations on campus with our roommates, with our friends, with our classmates, when we go on trips like this, because evangelism doesn't happen when we are comfortable. It happens when we are uncomfortable. So let God move and let God use you when you are uncomfortable.
I don't think you only have to do construction to go on a mission trip, okay? Because there's a lot of different mission trips, a lot of different things that we do. But I've asked Spencer, and he hasn't volunteered to do this, I've asked him to come up here and talk about what we did a couple of weeks ago, giving away hot chocolate and coffee.
So, if you didn't know, a couple weeks ago, was it like 3 or 4? We did a evangelism group thing where we gave out hot chocolate and coffee and the breezeway, and we were just asking people what's their story, and we came away with I wasn't there for the whole thing. I was there for the first like hour and a half or so, and came away with some stories, and I didn't get to talk to a lot of these people, but I got to listen to them being talked to, and I got to pray over a couple of them. But I remember specifically there was a couple people that were non-believers, and they had some very, very hard questions to answer about sexuality and all this stuff, and they were answered in the best way possible, considering the situation. But not only did we find good conversations with non-believers, but we found a lot of believers who were sort of like I have one dude here. He was the only member of his family who's a believer. All of his other family is atheist, and he went to church for the first time. He was playing spike ball here on campus and got invited to the well, and it's like. And he's been studying on his own this entire time, and I got to pray over him. And there's another girl who I believe she works at the gym over here, and she credits Jesus with the reason she's still alive. And then there's another guy who's also Christian, and he's a Marine, and he's a student, and a father, and a husband, and that's a lot. And he had a lot of stories about how his church just came through with they paid for his wife's medical bills without even being asked for, and it's just it was a real eye-opening experience. There's a lot of lost people on this campus, but there's also a lot of lone Christians. It was I'd say pray for all of those people, both equally, and it was a really cool experience.
So we have Ruth going out to the field to work. And the verse says, so she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in the field belonging to Boaz. As it turned out, as it happened. That's the reason I'm doing the study of the book of Ruth, is because of that verse. It just so happened. How do things happen? Am I making the choices and am I defining my life? Or am I making choices and God is defining my life? Am I trying to follow Him or am I trying to do my own thing? Ruth is trying to take care of herself and Naomi. And she knows about this law, so she's taking the steps and moving forward in the right direction. And she just so happens to go into Boaz's field. And she's working there. She works all day, and Boaz shows up. And if you read chapter 2, Boaz is like, who's that girl? Who's the one working in the field? And one of the field hands tells him, that's Naomi's daughter-in-law. And that's the one that followed her here after her husband died. And she's been trying to take care of her. She's been here working all day. She did take one break with us when he took a water break, but she's been working hard the whole time. And so Boaz opens up a conversation with her, and they talk, and they actually have lunch together, and they talk. And he's talking to her, but it sounds like a prayer breaks out. In verse 11, Boaz replied, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. Now have you left your father and mother in your homeland and come to live with the people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. That sounds like a prayer that he's saying to her, about her. And we'll talk about this later in the weeks to come. But notice what Boaz does. He befriends her, he talks to her, he wants to know why she does this. In verse 17, and so Ruth gleaned in the field until evening, and then she threshed the barley that she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town to her mother-in-law, saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over that she did not eat at lunch. So Ruth was taking care of herself, and she was taking care of her mother-in-law. She's doing the best she can, and she's moving forward. And that's what God is asking of us. Move forward in the direction you think I'm leading you, and I'm going to take care of the rest. Ruth is making efforts. If we sit still and do nothing, it's hard for God to use us. But while we're moving, while we're making choices, while we're doing and trying to follow Him, He can direct our path. And it just so happens that our crew chief had to have surgery. And so our spots team was going to be without a guy that could do the roof. But it just so happened I was in church and I saw Steve Hall and thought, I hadn't talked to Steve about this. And it just so happened that Steve said, well, I've got a doctor's appointment, but I think I can clear everything else out. Let me see what I can do. And so he was able to go with us. And everybody on the team would agree if Steve wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened. We might have been painting all week, but we would not have been doing the roof. It just so happened that David went home and talked to some friends and heard about what's going on with them, and he can pray for them, he can help them. It just so happened that some people stayed here and studied. It just so happened that some people went on a vacation over spring break and got to be closer friends. I'm not here to determine what just happens in your life. My thing is I want to be pointing you to Christ. I want to be pointing you to God. And it just so happens that God works. No matter how much we mess up, how much we screw up, whatever we do wrong, God's still there. He still loves us. He still cares for us. He still calls us His children. And that's the name we want to hear. Okay? And so how we live life matters, and what we do can matter for others. And it just so happens wherever you find yourself, you can be used by God. We do not understand mercy and grace if you can walk out of a room after committing the greatest sin that you can think of and being able to share the gospel with somebody else. Because God has already forgiven us of that. We need to ask for forgiveness. We need to repent of it. We need to stop doing that. But the whole thing is, God loves us that much. Now, I know some of you are sitting there going, man, I really, really want to roof a house now. Well, have I got a good idea for you. Rocket City Missions is going to be happening here in town May 31st through June the 4th, right here in Huntsville, Alabama. Okay? We've got the flyer up. If you want to go and help and serve this summer, we work with a bunch of youth groups, which they normally do sidings and some other house projects. But we will be roofing a house. It will only be one story. Are you volunteering already? I saw a hand go.
He said, that's me.
So we will be roofing a house this summer, or one or two. If you're wanting to go on a mission trip, we have one mission student's deadline is passed, but we do have an associational mission trip to Alaska. It's July 9th through the 16th. For you, as a college student, it will only be $700, and that is really cheap for a week in Alaska. We will be going up there to do VBS, Backyard Bible Clubs, and every afternoon we'll be going to a different location in Alaska to start gospel conversations. Our whole goal there is to share the good news of Jesus Christ with those we come in contact with. There will not be a hammer lifted. You won't have to hold a nail, but there will be a lot of talking, and there will be a lot of interaction with youngins and with older ones, okay? So those are two different trips. And Will was talking about a trip to the Smoky Mountains. What was that?
Yeah,
So I got introduced to this.
The camera can't see you.
I'll try to make this quick. I got introduced to this opportunity, and I thought, well, I can't help but share this with you guys. So in the Smoky Mountains, Gatlinburg, so it's already a place that most people want to go, right? So there's tourists, there's locals, but there's also internationals that come and work for the whole summer there. This ministry has connections that they have built over the years with different areas, and so they minister to these three groups of people during the summer. They're looking for college students who can come for the summer and serve. They've got a really nice house that you get to stay in. They'll have house parents that will be there to, they're house parents. They basically, what they're there is to serve you guys, so that they're to fix the meals and things like that for you. So you have home cooked meals the whole time. And it's only like $150, and it's not too far away. They also said, hey, look, we understand some students need to work during the summer. We understand that need. So they have like what they're calling an internship program, where you still get to stay at the house and you work during the week, but then do ministry when you're not working. So it's really awesome. It's more people connections than it is like construction and things like that. So if you're looking for an opportunity, let me know, and I'll be glad to get you connected with them. It's not too far away, and it's, I think they'll also even work with your schedule if you can't stay the whole summer. But they're looking right now because they normally recruit from Pursuit, and Pursuit was later. A lot of students had already made up their mind what they were going to do this summer. Maybe you've already made up your mind, but could it be that God's leading you to do something different? So let me know if you want more information.
So I want to hear it just so happens stories, okay? I want to know what's going on in your life. We'll save that for another night. But just thank you for being here. Thank you for worshiping God, and thank you for what you're doing on this campus and at the places you work, the places you go, and the families that you're involved or that you belong to. Keep on being that light for Christ. Let us go to Him in prayer. Father God, I just want to thank you for tonight and the opportunity to worship you. Lord, I don't feel like we need more rain, but evidently when we do, it's out there. I thank you, Lord, for the flowers that are going to come. I thank you for the seasons as they change. I thank you for your love and your mercy and your grace you show us each and every day, Lord. And I pray that's what we show to others. That we don't hold it in, that we just don't sit here and just wait for you to bless us, Lord, but that we go out and that we be about your business. And we go do what you want us to do. It might be our choices and some of the things that we get involved in, but we know that your hand's in it. Lord, guide us, use us, glorify yourself, and let us just be an afterthought.
Amen. Please stand and sing this last song with us. I'll do the final one.
His only Son.
2.
So like I said, 3.5 feet away. We were right here. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. It's been a good night. We've been talking a lot about ministry. One of our announcements, Ed was already talked a little bit about, was that Rocket City Missions that is the end of May into the first part of June. That is, we'll be working on roofing a house and partnering with Rocket City Missions and doing that. And I will tell you that I enjoyed that enough that I am telling companies as I'm interviewing with them right now for full-time jobs, I would like to start June 6th for the express purpose of doing Rocket City Missions because I very, very much enjoy it. So I'd love for you to do that. It is a very fun time.
You don't have to be there the whole time.
Yes. And so that is a project where if you have a free day at some point in that week, you can come and do it. It is not a full week commitment. Thanks, Jimmy. But then things coming up these next few weeks. We have our prayer meeting at 7:30 and celebration at 8:30 next week. And so that's going to be one of our regular celebrations. And then the week following that, we'll have our next First Tuesday. Next First Tuesday is going to be pie auction. And so pie auction, for those of you that don't know what it is we auction off pies. And you can eat them. That is not the purpose that they are there for. So it is all of the members of the leadership team and some others will each bring a pie. And the goal of this pie auction is that every one of them gets pied in the face. And Katie is shaking her head because she has tried to get out of this for the past few weeks, and I'm not going to let her. I'm not going to let her. And so yes, come that day, come with money. All of those proceeds go to missions. We have 2 of our members of BCM are going overseas for mission this summer. Laurel and David going to Asia. And then one more of our members are going to Rochester, New York. So Spencer Jackson is going to be going to Rochester, New York. And so that pie auction is going to be pretty directly benefiting some of our own BCM students, and it's very exciting. And then one more fun event that we've got, our last very large event. Yes?
There's also going to be food.
Yes.
Yeah, the pie that goes in your face.
Free taco.
Yes. And so that day, being First Tuesday, we'll be having dinner. And so New Salem Baptist Church is going to be providing our dinner that night, and we will be having Taco Mama. And so it's very exciting. And then one of our last big fun events we have coming up this year is our spring formal. And so it is a dance, and it is called a formal. You can wear whatever you want. Most people will be wearing dresses and ties. Someone, I will not say who, but Clay came in a Hawaiian shirt last year. And so the theme for that is the most magical dance on earth, bringing the magic of Disney to the BCM. What?
You're mixing up your Disneyland and Walt Disney World marketing.
Listen, I designed the graphic that is going to be on the screen, and it says the most magical dance on earth. So,
No.
Can we just say it's a dance? And leave it
This
at
doesn't
that?
sound very happy.
So, come, have fun, dance, have snacks, and we'll have a good time that night. That is going to be on April 2nd, which is in about a week and a half. And so, yes, come, have fun, have a good time. All right, thank you, everybody. There's snacks in the back. We'll hang out. Thank you all for coming.